Communist mainland China and capitalist Taiwan are the strange bedfellows behind the Jacaranda Resort, known variously as the Sandpiper Resort and the Flamingo Resort. The complex is planned for this 350-hectare site at Anna Bay. The developer, Myrtle Properties Limited, is a consortium which includes finance from Hong Kong and Indonesia, with the major partners from Taiwan and China.
It won't essentially be a Chinese resort. It will be Chinese financed, and I think there'll be a lot of overseas investors who own villas, but it will just look like an ordinary Australian resort.
One of the golf courses will be specifically for Taiwanese use?
Yes, it will. They, as part of their financial interest, they want one small golf club for themselves, so that's been built down the bottom corner, as it were, but that won't have any effect on the main golf course, which serves everyone who uses the resort.
After 3 years of negotiations, contracts for the land have been exchanged with 10 local farmers at a cost of around $8.5 million. Developers describe it as a mini sanctuary cove. Myrtle Properties chairman John Byrne says Treasury approval must be secured for the overseas interests, but he anticipates no problems with what seems to be a growing foreign investment in the Port Stephens area.
I believe there's a Japanese interest in a golf course near the Salamander Estate, which is a Port Stephens Shire Council housing development. But it's been talked of for a while. I hope it goes ahead. The area needs excellent development.
The developers predict a start early next year, with a 4-year construction period and 500 jobs. The resort will be designed in association with Beijing-based company China Rainbow Construction. It's understood initial designs submitted by the Chinese firm were considered unsuitable. Local consultants are now working with the Chinese to come up with more acceptable concepts. Leslie Robinson, NBN News.
After months of fundraising, students from Wyong, the Entrance and Berkeley Vale schools today finally got to play Santa Claus, presenting a cheque for $1,000 to pupils at the junction. The primary school lost 11 of its 16 classrooms in the earthquake, and after hearing of the situation, the Central Coast students decided it really would be better to give rather than receive.
Our school, Berkeley Vale, is fairly new, and the other schools haven't had as many problems as here. Half the school at the junction has been demolished, and they're working in portables now, so we don't mind the money going off.
From there it was over to Carrington, where another $1,000 and the announcement of a Keep Australia Beautiful award ended a trying year on a particularly high note.
As we were nearing completion of earthquake repairs, we were hit by a fire, which was very devastating to the whole community. It has taken several months and a lot of money to effectively repair the building, and it really is a credit to all of the people who have been involved in this.
And the good work won't end here. The Web of Care Fund already has its sights set on next year.
Well, I'm hoping that we can do this at least once a year, that the 3 schools and perhaps even primary schools can get together. Primary schools of the cluster can get together and have one big fundraising function and use that as a disaster relief fund and distribute help as it's needed.
The paint fumes were flying thick and fast at the Glendale TAFE College today as the state's finest apprentice spray painters compared their colour matching skills. The competitors were the top third-year students from 13 colleges. The hunter was represented by Glendale's Andrew Holliday and Dungog's Daryl Newton, who attends Newcastle TAFE. The rose among the thorns was Granville's Michelle Giaquinto, but she was anything but worried.
I'm pretty accustomed to that now, being the only girl in my form, and at work I'm the only girl amongst about 40 guys, so I'm pretty used to that.
It was a case of mix and match by trial and error, as competitors tried to find the perfect shade of sunflower to present to the judges and their dreaded spectrometer.
It actually x-rays or measures the standard colour, and then it can tell the difference between the standard colour and the contestant's colour.
The overall winner was Wollongong's Andrew Griffiths, but all can expect a bright future.
It is a definite art with all these new exotic colours coming out on the motor vehicles, pearls and AA metallics.
So all these people could look forward to a healthy future in the trade?
Without a doubt, without a doubt. They're assured. There's no losers here. They're all winners.
The Advance 2 made a sight when it was piggybacked on a truck through Nelson Bay for its launching almost 2 years ago. Years of planning and 16,000 hours of work were behind Owen and Linda Griffiths, a life of champagne sailing ahead. The Griffiths charter their boat for day cruises and extended ocean voyages, sharing their home and lifestyle with paying passengers.
You sort of get the bug, you like the lifestyle more than anything. It becomes very casual, very comfortable, and you're having the opportunity of seeing a lot of areas and meeting people that you, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't get to actually see or meet.
Owen Griffiths has spent a lifetime working on and under the sea. He learnt shipbuilding trades at the Newcastle dockyard, was a water policeman and dive instructor. He's no starry-eyed sailor.
It's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration when you want to do this sort of thing. I think we were pretty lucky to be in the position to do what we've done, and it's taken all my life of experience to be able to do the thing, where a young person hasn't had the opportunity really.
Sailing the boat is a breeze for its owners. It's a sight that stirs the imagination of landlubbers.
I think if you want to do it enough or strong enough, you'll do it. I think the problem that a lot of people have is that they don't have a real initiative. They don't really want to in the back of their minds, where we were busting to do it.
Today, receivers were auctioning plant and equipment at what was once one of the biggest oyster farms in Port Stephens. Oyster farmers say the fire sale at CS Phillips Proprietary Limited is a sign of the times in the troubled industry. 500,000 oyster sticks lie neglected on derelict leases under the control of receivers. In an unusual show of unity within its ranks, the New South Wales Oyster Farmers Association has approached the government with an offer to clean up these sticks in an attempt to wipe out the Pacific oysters which breed there. The Oyster Farmers Association says the derelict leases are a haven for the Pacific oyster. Clean these up, they say, and the port will be rid of the rogue mollusk.
We believe it has to be done because ocean drift, and we're going into a study on this right now, but ocean drift could cause the spawn from the Pacific oyster cultivation in Port Stephens to drift up and down the coast, and that's going to endanger most other estuaries.
Barry Phillips and members of the Oyster Farmers Association are angry that Agriculture Minister Ian Armstrong has moved to legalise the sale of Pacific oysters and close Port Stephens, instead of enforcing a clean-up.
And we've been saying to the government all the time, we just want some money for a little bit extra labour and let the oyster farmers do the job themselves. And we're still willing to do that, but now our offer is coming, or help is coming from other rivers, because they see this as a very big challenge to their future. and the survival of the industry if something is not done.
But they still will not get rid of the Pacific oyster out of Port Stephens. Doesn't matter what they do, they can clean up all the cultivation in Port Stephens, every post, rail, every bit of cultivation in Port Stephens, but Pacific oysters are here to stay. They're in the water. You can't see them only under the microscope. They're here to stay and you won't get rid of them.
Brothers Barry and Colin Phillips represent the two sides of the Pacific oyster argument. There's no easy solution to the problem which has split not only the Phillips family, but the troubled Port Stephens oyster industry. Leslie Robinson, NBN News.
NBN is already tooled up for some of the biggest jobs in Australia. Now it's out to take on the world. The company has won a quality assurance certificate from Lloyd's Register, better known for its shipping survey standards and now for the integrity of big contract tenderers. International competition is fierce.
And all countries in the world, particularly the main exporting areas such as Southeast Asia and Japan, are very actively working on these quality systems at the moment. So for an Australian company to be in there with them, they must have these quality systems in place.
Much of NBN's work is for the mining and rail transport industries. The certificate could help clinch a deal to supply 40 Tangara trains to Denmark, an $80 million project. The rating is also necessary for defence work.
There's a desire to get into defence work that initially started the quality management program in Gninnen. We're still obviously very interested in the frigate project, and there are certain aspects of that we're pursuing currently.
The state government contributes on a dollar-for-dollar basis with companies eager to develop their management systems and break into the export market. The Minister for Business and Consumer Affairs, Jerry Peacock, toured the Gninnen plant before handing over the final instalment of an almost $100,000 commitment to the company. To Hunter Valley Rewinds and Ozcoil at Belmont, the quality assurance rating meant a rethink of work practices and an accountability for every nut, bolt and copper strand of the electric motor rewind and development business. The customer gets exactly what is demanded. The companies employ about 40 people and are set for expansion.
In the few short days Santa has been touring the Hunter, it's become obvious he's finally adapted to the local conditions. Today, the bulky red suit and reindeer were nowhere to be seen, but that didn't stop the children at the Awabakal Daycare Centre giving him a rousing reception. Cunningly disguised as Aboriginal storyteller Burnham, Santa gave out a sackload of gifts in the best Christmas tradition.
To modern day Aboriginal society, it's very, very important. I just do this as a service. I think it's very, very important to get into the spirit of Christmas, and so we're having a great time here today.
But the elaborate ruse just didn't work. The little ones were in no doubt about just who it was that was handing out the goodies. Who gave you those presents?
Santa. Santa over there. Santa.
Who gave you the presents?
Santa Claus.
And with a beard like that to play with, who can blame them?
That's genuine. All homegrown, mine. And so it's somehow, I get called Santa Claus every day. So why not act it out on one particular day in this really good spirit?
The Commission says it's halving the generation of electricity at its Munmora station. This will lead to a reduction of a third of the workforce. The Commission's General Manager, Bruce Flanagan, said in Sydney today the staff pruning of 200 will be by voluntary redundancy. He gave an assurance there'll be no forced retrenchments. A survey has shown that number 1 and 2 units at Munmora will be used only for occasional peak load duty, requiring minimal maintenance. A decision on major expenditure to update the units will not be made until the mid-1990s, when it's expected to return them to full production by the turn of the century. The announcement is seen as another government blow to the Hunter. 2 weeks ago, Elcom announced it was selling its coal mines, many in the Hunter, which is expected to lead to the loss of hundreds of jobs. Today, this move was applauded by the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce and Industry, but condemned by the Newcastle Trades Hall.
It's a focus of very intensive mining, power generation activities. 75% of the state's power comes from the Hunter. You can see puffs of smoke coming out at Musselbrook. We've got incredible beaches. We've got lots of tourism in the region, particularly in the Western Hunter and in the north. We've got Barrington Tops. We get snow. We've got a marvellous harbour. And we've got a lot of agricultural resources.
It's these diverse resources which make the Hunter region so unique. Dr. Diana Day has been appointed Senior Researcher of the university's new institute, set up to study the regional environment.
We want to respond to the regional environmental problems, and there are many. We want to respond to the future and get a lot of initiatives going whereby we can look down the track and say, OK, these are going to be the problems. This is how we might address them.
By coordinating those courses with an environment base already offered at the university and introducing others, Dr. Day hopes to create a management centre second to none. Not only will the Hunter benefit from its findings, but also other regional areas in Australia and overseas.
We can sell those techniques and policy recommendations to other states, other governments around Australia. This university has first-rate environmental courses, first-rate staff. We want to get those together, we want to develop the work, but also extend that work on the national and in the international forum.
It could take a few years for the government-funded centre to establish itself, but with environment such an important global issue, Dr. Day is confident the results will be there.
The poppet heads lowered men and pit ponies to the coalface and winched back the rewards of their labour. The scramble for coal from the rich South Maitland coalfields earlier this century saw 28 mines and villages spring up around Cessnock. Kitchener was just one. This structure stands as a reminder to that heritage and the more than 500 miners who toiled in the Aberdare Central pit.
You could ask some of the children of today, and when you're talking about a poppet head, and they look at you and wonder what you're talking about at times.
It's our history. It belongs to our children. That reason alone is enough for us to keep it, I think.
Thanks to the efforts of residents and Cessnock's Mayor Marie Callaghan, who's behind the project Boots and All, the poppet head has been saved from demolition and a plan to relocate it to a Sydney museum.
It lives here, it belongs here, and they wanted to take it away to Sydney, and Sydney had poppet heads and they didn't look after theirs. They pulled theirs down and threw it away, so they can't have ours.
Right. The fight's over now, the battle's won. All we've got to do now is do the work.
The area is to be turned into a park by a committee of volunteers, relying on their own fundraising efforts and community support. An old pit dam has been stocked with fish and could one day see paddle boats and picnickers around its shores. The committee is determined to see its vision through.
I think you'll find that the people that are here and the people that belong to our little group will be here when it's all finished as well, and probably a lot more.
The John Hunter Hospital is the most modern hospital in the state and the showpiece of the Hunter region. But before the real business of looking after patients starts next month, the hospital has opened its doors to the public. Tours to all sections of the hospital, from neonatal to the operating theatres, gave people the chance to see what $250 million can build, and all were impressed.
I think that they've spent a lot of money, but it's worthwhile, and you can see it in the equipment.
Australia's coming of age, and this is the way we've got to go in the future, and it's lovely to see it in Newcastle.
Time will take care of whatever price they paid for. The 5 years' time will say, wasn't that a bargain?
I'm impressed with the amount of money that's been spent, and I assume that accordingly we'll see the results with fine healthcare in the district.
The hospital expects thousands of visitors during the weekend. Combined with the hospital open day is the Hunter Health Expo, with scores of displays set up around the grounds advocating healthcare. During World War II, the 113th Heavy Battery Unit was stationed at Fort Wallace, one of 5 observation posts monitoring Newcastle Harbour. Although the station did not see any active fighting, it was the city's first line of defence during the war years. In 1945, the fort closed down and was left at the mercy of the elements and vandals. When retired Colonel Richard Mort and his mates returned to the fort 4 years ago, they were horrified.
Very disgusted, and because it had been our old home, we decided to do something about it.
Although all were over 70 years of age, they set about restoring the old underground rooms and gun pits.
They started emptying the gun pits, which had been filled with sand, probably about 60, 70 tonnes of sand in each pit. That was started by wheelbarrow and shovel.
The men hope to turn the underground plotting rooms into a museum and meet there every weekend to discuss old times.
The sun was shining on the Broadmeadow racecourse for the running of the 1990 Jays Christmas Cup, and the punting public came armed with some eye-catching hats and wads of cash. The challenge was to find a quiet corner to study the form before weighing down your fancy with the hard-earned folding stuff.
Reluctant guest to 30 to 5 each way, 1,500.
It was a difficult process, and betting for the feature event saw good support for several runners. The race itself proved a suitably tense tussle.
Reluctant Guest went up on the outside and took the lead from Mia. Battling on pretty well is Fun to Race, and behind those Endless Sky. Down the outside is Costa del Sol. Reluctant Guest just the leader. Mia's fighting back on the inside. Fun to Race makes a line of 3. Reluctant Guest just in front, drawing to the post. Fun to Race diving through on the inside. It's a head bobbing finish. Nothing in it. Reluctant Guest or Fun to Race. Almost a dead heat.
The judge's verdict meant a win for the Cessnock connection of trainer Colleen Underhill and record-breaking jockey Robert Thompson. The winner paid $7.70 and $2.60, with the unlucky Reluctant Guest returning $2.80 and third-place getter Mare paying $2.40. The Quinella was worth $45 even, and the trifecta a handy $768.
I'll put on that.